So you're, of course, Christoph, the president of the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Foundation here in Switzerland. And as such, I had the pleasure to meet you a year ago, because I'm, as you know, of course, the ambassador, or one of the ambassadors of the foundation. And so I'm very delighted to have you here today to talk about human rights and healthcare. As we know, already in 1948, human rights was, or healthcare was declared a human right. Now, what implications does that have in today's world?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I think when you talk about the intersection between human rights and healthcare, the first thing that everybody needs to consider or think about is having access, universal access to healthcare, seen as a fundamental human right and not as a privilege for the few or for the more affluent people in society. So I think, and this is something that definitely is not being executed on a global scale. I mean, there are countries, many Western developed countries, but even the most powerful country in the world, which is still considered to be the United States, is not able to provide universal access to healthcare for everybody. And I think when you, as it is with all human rights, the implication and the execution of human rights depends on many, many factors. And such is the same with healthcare, that it requires tremendous efforts in all the countries around the world to make healthcare accessible. And I think healthcare is something that, as long as you have it, for example, here in Switzerland or in other European countries, as long as you have healthcare, as long as you don't need it, you don't really realize the benefit. But as soon as you need healthcare, it's pretty much the only thing that you're thinking about. So on a global scale, the number one consideration is free and universal access to healthcare for everybody.
Sure. I mean, as we all know, on a global scale, the out-of-pocket model of financing healthcare is the main one, the mainstream one on a global level. Here in Switzerland, however, we have a quite good healthcare system with a super coverage and universal healthcare basically for all citizens. But there are other issues. So what are the issues here in Switzerland in terms of healthcare and human rights?
Well, it seems to me that when you look at Switzerland, we're talking about a highly developed, one could say, capitalistic system with a very high quality healthcare system with universal access, which is true, which is actually mandatory. Sure. We have mandatory healthcare coverage. But the other thing that when you go away from the global scale to a local or more regional scale, and when you go away from the fundamental belief of healthcare as a human right, there is another aspect to human rights in healthcare, and that is within the system itself. So, as in every system, I think that one of the topics, at least for me, from my perspective and in my opinion, in Switzerland, but also in other countries, still is the role of women in healthcare. So I think that there is a lot of room for improvement when it comes to creating an environment that allows for women to pursue a career in the field of healthcare, be it in academics or in clinical, be it in the field of medicine or in the field of nursing or other fields in healthcare, because I see a big problem or a big challenge in combining private family life with medical life, with career.
That's certainly true.
Because as long as you're not able to align your working situation or working hours with the schedule that you are bound to when you have kids, for example, it becomes a problem. And as we all know, especially in the academic and clinical setting, if you lose track, if you lose too much time, you're basically losing your velocity, you're losing your speed, and your opportunities and chances for further development are being decreased. So I think that although a lot of things have been done since, we're talking World War II maybe, because you mentioned 1948,
Great.
A lot of things have been done and have been achieved, and we certainly live in a country that has, I would say, almost perfect pre-existing conditions for further improvement, you know. But there's certainly room for improvement, and just to mention one thing is the gender opportunity. I like to refer to it as opportunity and not equality, because at the end of the day, everybody needs to be given the same opportunity to pursue whatever he or she or wherever his or her talents are.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Christoph, thank you very much. I'm so delighted to have you here and also to support you and the foundation.
Thank you for that as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.